Hello, and welcome to the Project Good podcast. I'm your host, Anne Marie Hilton. Project Good is a social impact podcast interviewing experts and advocates about the pressing problems that we face globally and hearing how they suggest we move forward in the future. The Project Good podcast is brought to you by Project Good Work. The goal of this podcast is to inspire people and organizations to develop a mindset that can move others to positive action regarding the complex social issues facing people and the planet. For May, we're focusing on big tech. During the pandemic, the focus on AI and big tech started to grow because we were no longer interacting with other human beings face-to-face to help stop the spread of COVID. People started relying on their social media to keep updated with friends, working from home using Google for everything, and trying to figure out how to automate as much as possible to avoid going insane. As a global society, we definitely saw the benefits of having access to large technology platforms and probably in a large number of ways saved our complex lifestyles that we lead. Who could even imagine what the global impact would have been if COVID hit during the 1980s, before we were so interconnected? Although the benefits were clearly seen during the crisis, it also pointed out how dependent we had become on technology and how personal privacy is in danger as we continue to upload our lives on the platforms we use every day. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Tom Kemp, who is an author, entrepreneur, seed investor, and policy advisor. Tom is the author of Containing Big Tech: How to Protect Your Civil Rights, Economy, and Democracy. Tom was the founder and the CEO of Centrify, a leading cybersecurity cloud provider that amassed over 2,000 enterprise customers, including over 60% of the Fortune 50. Let's get into the interview. Today, we're discussing big tech with Tom Kemp, an angel investor with seed investments in over a dozen tech startups. In addition, Tom has served as a technology policy advisor for political campaigns and advocacy groups, including leading the campaign marketing efforts in 2020 to pass California Proposition 24, which is called the California Privacy Rights Act, and advising and contributing to the passage of state privacy laws in 2023, such as the California SB 362, called the California Delete Act, and the Texas SB 2105. Tom writes extensively on technology policy on his blog and has been interviewed as an expert in cybersecurity and privacy by The Guardian, Politico, Washington Post, CNBC, Fox News, and many others. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. And I am, I am excited about this conversation because originally when I started out my career, I started in working in technology. I was part of a educational tech startup, actually, that has grown to be quite popular now. For those who have kids, I'll give them a shout out now for the Mind Institute. If everybody knows about Gigi the penguin, if you have young children that learn about math and spatial temporal reasoning and using music such as Mozart to add a little bit of different dimension to teach children to enjoy math. So I guess I come from a tech background, so this is really exciting to have you on to dive into this topic, which, of course, I couldn't have imagined way back, 20 years ago where we would be in the world of technology, since now everything is like digital. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Tom, before we dive into all the deep things about big tech is what has driven you, or what drove you, I guess, to go into the world of technology. I know that you study computer science, but I guess why did you choose to do what you do?
Yeah, no, it was wanting a job coming out of college. And I also was a history major, besides being a computer science major. And I figured that doing the computer science would give me a few more options. I'm glad that I have both a tech background, but also a liberal arts background, as well. So it's kind of nice that in Silicon Valley, you can kind of merge the two and come out with products that are really appealing to consumers.
Okay, that's cool. I have to say you're a different type of animal, and what I mean by that is usually most people can either lean towards more like the science. They don't necessarily have the maybe like of liberal arts or liberal studies. So amazing that you have both sides. I guess using both sides of your brain.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, it's kind of cool to be able to apply, what you learn by reading and literature, et cetera, and seeing if it can apply to technology. And if you can strike that right balance, you can come out with some really cool products. And probably the best example of that is actually the big tech companies. They've done a very nice job on that, but as I write in the book, there's some downsides associated with some of their products and technologies.
Yes. And yes, so I definitely want to dive in because I think you're the perfect person for the times that we find ourselves in, because we are finding essentially it's almost like, I guess I'm going to say it's kind of like a shell. So there's, people want that like personal understanding from technology, but then there's the part that is not as touchable to people. And what I mean by that is that, having the background that you do, that you are able to make just like, the 70-year-old grandma that, didn't grow up in a tech world, but now has had to adapt in order to, make it through their day, can now see how it works for them personally and not get overwhelmed. So I love that. I want to, as I'm trying to decide how, I guess there's so many things that are happening with technology and people are up in arms. I guess I'll just take the hot topic, AI. I'll just start there because everybody's afraid that AI is coming to get them, coming to take their jobs, coming to, tell them what to do. And I guess if we let it get far enough, even lock them in their houses. I see this as my dad likes to have technology, so he has it set up that he can just tell his house to lock the doors. So, if anybody hacks ever, I guess you could get to a point that he has to break a window to get out. So how afraid, I guess, should we be of AI taking over?
Well, we've actually had AI for a number of years. And so AI has historically been used for automated decision making. And so a lot of stock trades and other things have been done via AI, but over the last year or so, that this growth in what's called generative AI has really become what people associate with artificial intelligence. And generative AI allows you to type in some text and have a chat, like with ChatGPT, get like you put a sentence and it gives you paragraphs, or you can describe an image, like a panda in a spacesuit in outer space, and then it'll create images or videos, etc. But it actually has an incredible double-edged sword. I mean, people are using AI right now to do a better job of detecting disease, right? And it's being used in cars to make them safer. It's used for voice recognition, personal assistance. The list goes on. But the issue is that it can also be used for exploitative purposes. And one of the fundamental problems that we have right now with AI, especially the generative AI, is that it's getting so like humans in terms of the content, like human created content, that it's very difficult for us to know, is this really a human we're interacting with in terms of with a phone conversation, or we're chatting with someone, or is it AI? Is an image really a photo, or was it created by AI? And so we now run the risk because of this lack of transparency. I'm going to call it like, food labels to identify if it's human or synthetic that can really trip us up as well. So it's incredible technology. It is the biggest technology that we've probably seen since the mobile revolution. It is incredibly revolutionary in terms of the good it can do, but it could be used for negative purposes. And one way it can be used for exploitative purposes to scam you with fake voicemails or not allowing you to unsubscribe from a service, et cetera. So there's some big challenges that need to be addressed. And historically, regulators and lawmakers haven't done a good job of keeping up with the technology, and hopefully that they'll be able to at least stay on par with the huge AI revolution that's occurring to provide some appropriate guardrails.
Now, I guess, also, I was just thinking, because you have, I don't know how many countries, I guess all the big, the ones that have most of the money are probably all touching AI. And so, regulation might be, taking place here in the U.S., but then, over in Europe or, China, less regulations, which then, because it is technology, it's not something you can, always touch or hold or see even, that it can just get out of hand. I guess, do you feel that there needs to be kind of a global regulation of how far we let AI go? This is just an opinion question.
Yeah, actually, ironically, over the last 15 years, Europe has actually led the way in terms of tech regulation. It first started with the GDPR, which is their privacy law. And then they recently passed the AI Act to start doing AI regulations. Ironically, the U.S. has really fallen behind. We don't have a national privacy law, nor is there any significant regulation or legislation regarding AI. Now, a lot of people are thinking about, hey, AI could introduce bias. It could be used to discriminate against people. This concept of digital redlining, could potentially be accelerated or enhanced using AI, et cetera. And so what's happening is that the states are really taking the lead in doing tech regulation. And I'm very fortunate to be in California, where it's called the California effect. And California has historically kind of led the nation in consumer protection. It, started with automobile safety and emission standards. And California was the first state in 2018 to pass a comprehensive privacy law. And now we have 13 or 14 other states that have followed suit, but it's still very much a patchwork. So we do have a fundamental problem that when you look at the growth of technology, be it social media, online advertising, et cetera, we've really, in the U.S., fallen behind. And there's some significant impact to society in terms of kids' online safety, disinformation, and increased polarization, and then just overall lack of online privacy. And it's scary, given what I described, what AI can do, whether or not we actually know if content is human created or synthetic. It kind of raises the bar. And so I'm hoping that, unlike what happened with the other, on social media revolutions, mobile revolutions that were really far behind, I'm hoping in the case of AI that there's some activity right there. But it is a patchwork. There isn't a consistency right here. And we just fundamentally have to ask ourselves, is it okay to have unregulated collection of all our personal information and then unregulated usage of that information in AI systems? Because we may find ourselves in a world, if we don't put some regulation, that a avatar of ourselves, maybe with our own voice, may be used by businesses to try to sell us their products, right? And the funny thing is that we have copyright for literature and music, et cetera, but our personal information is not copyrighted, our face, our voice, et cetera. And so there's significant concern about how those personal aspects can be used against people vis-a-vis AI. So this is a big issue that everyone's grappling, and I'm glad you brought this up.
Yes, actually, and it was leading me to talk about privacy and data of individuals, because, the big thing, and, I personally, I haven't been to China, and I haven't seen I don't know how true, because I don't, some of the information that comes out, you never know what is, really happening. And also they are a much more closed society. But there's the thing of the talk of personalized, essentially, I guess the best way I could describe it, obviously we're individuals, but you become your individual kind of silo contained brand, which they're calling kind of the social credit score, which would be everything kind of that is running around, also goes along with all of the things that are online with you. And so it becomes like I'm calling it a virtual prison for each person, because all this information is following you. It's more of a I know it's called the web as it is, and it's like each of us are I'll just say prey. Like a spider's web, where it's sticky, and here we are stuck with on the web, and then we have all these strands of information that are sticking out from us. And so in that, I don't see technology slowing down for many reasons. Obviously, we're kind of addicted to it, and then also there's the obvious economic money that can be made, and the world is changing constantly. But how do we? And I know this is addressed in your book. I guess how do we start as individuals to protect or I guess I'll use kind of a little bit of your title, contain ourselves from all of these outside forces that are coming to us and things that we can't see. Like one of the things that I have experienced myself is you get those robocalls that at first they sound so much more and more and more like a person, because you can say hello, and then they're say hello. And sometimes they're like, oh, I can't hear you. And you're like, oh, you think it's a real person. But then once you start getting into it, you realize it was never a real person. So how do we start protecting ourselves, personally with all of this?
Yeah, no, it's a huge issue. And if I just want to step back, we've had large companies in the past. We've had, the railroads, we've had Standard Oil. But a lot of the technology companies, the largest ones that we call big tech, their business model is not about producing things like railroads or pumping oil or making cars, but about mining our personal data. And so in the early days of big tech, the mining of data was about us serving us annoying ads, right? And we said, okay, that's the trade-off, that we'll give some of our data, and people sometimes refer to it as data exhaust, and we'll deal with the ads, and then they would build a digital voodoo doll of us, and where they would get to know what our likes are, our preferences, etc. But what's happening is that as they've gathered so much information, it's very possible for people to manipulate us and use that data in a way against people. And so, for example, we're now in a post-abortion rights America, where health data, things that was legal before, can be used against people, right? Or that data can be combined with AI, can be used to influence us or addict us and get us into rabbit holes of conspiracy beliefs, which is not healthy for our democracy. So I think, to answer your question, I think the most important thing is that you got to reduce your data footprint, right? Because the more data about you sloshing around, it can be also weaponized from an identity theft perspective. If companies know the high school, your maiden name, things of that nature, those are part of the keys to the kingdom to get at your bank accounts, et cetera, right? Likewise, it's probably not healthy that businesses know that if you have a particular medical condition, because there may be an opportunity for people to discriminate against you and say, look, I don't want to hire people that are pregnant or have cancer or things of that nature. And in fact, people may say, well, this is ridiculous, but it actually really happened, because the same advertising system that businesses use to target individuals based on demographics, it was found that people were using that same system to exclude ads for rental properties to certain organizations. So if you want to say, look, I want to target, as a business, I want to target young women with children to sell diapers, that someone could use that same advertising system that the big tech organizations have to say, I want to exclude young women with children from ads for rental properties or job opportunities. So we have a data issue here, and the whole business model of the large tech providers, for the most part, is about mining our data and use it from an advertising. So if we can reduce our data footprint, and there's ways that you can actually do that. You can, for example, block third-party trackers. You can do that, for example, on the iPhone. There's this thing called App Tracking Transparency that blocks third-party trackers from collecting information about you. You can block third-party cookies that capture all your web traffic and what websites, and you could use a plugin like this group called EFF. They have a plugin into Chrome called Privacy Badger that stops that. And then, of course, you can then go into, for example, Google. You can go to myactivity.google.com if you're logged into your Google account and turn off what they call personalization that will reduce the amount of data being collected. And that's one thing I put in the book in an appendix, which is, here are the simple steps you can take to reduce the data footprint. And the reason why I kind of gave this monologue about their business models is that I wanted to show what they collect and how it can be used negatively, and therefore it makes it even more important to reduce the proverbial data footprint, not allow companies to have a digital voodoo doll of you, which can be poked at to sell you things or try to push you in certain directions and influence you as well. And so this is a huge issue, and I think it probably may get worse, with AI, unless we not only have a national privacy law or state-level privacy laws and laws regarding AI, but if there's a evangelism and a consciousness with consumers to, say no to these large tech companies just collecting massive amounts of information about us.
Yes, and one of the things that kept coming to my mind as you were talking is that I feel it's almost, I'm going to sound like advocacy, or I know that's not really a word, but in a way, it's kind of like a push against. A lot of people say, bring up the word like our capitalistic society. I guess maybe we've just, I don't know, we've gone too far, or we couldn't be going too far. I guess I kept thinking of everything as like a drive for money. I kept pushing that. That's, everything I kept thinking about was like, there's something in the, like, our capitalistic society. And that's, why I think, obviously America has not regulated as much as Europe. Would you say that is, would you say that is why they haven't had as many regulations as Europe? Is that it's, based on our capitalistic mindset?
Well, I think it's, look, I mean, I think there's multiple things. I mean, first of all, coming out of World War II, there was a consciousness about the state collecting too much information and using that information against people. And so, the right of privacy was basically built in it was originally in the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and that was adopted in Europe as part of the constitutional fabric. So there is a fundamental right of privacy that Europe has, and so that's the first thing. The second thing is that Europe has historically not led on the technology front, and in terms of startups and innovative companies, and that's been more of an American/Silicon Valley thing, and so there wasn't that concern about, hey, let's not impact our economy, let's not impact innovation, and so people in Europe tend to decide more on personal protection, consumer rights, et cetera. And so we now have a situation that people call this the Brussels effect, that for the last 10 or 15 years, that most of the tech policy has come from Europe. And in the U.S., because privacy is not in the U.S. Constitution, right? It's kind of a newer concept. Justice Brandeis wrote an essay with another gentleman where he defined privacy as the right to be left alone, and it's heavily influenced people, and now we have various state laws, and that has led to some data privacy laws, right? But it's not consistent. And if you look at Roe v. Wade, that part of it was based on this privacy argument, and people said, well, at the Supreme Court, they said no, that there isn't this right associated with this medical procedure. So the fact of the matter is that there has historically been pushback, about regulation of tech, and the problems that have happened is that I think everyone will agree that things have gotten out of whack. That 1/3 the internet is kids, but there are no guardrails that kids' data can be collected online. We have a situation that if a kid that identifies themselves as a kid sets up a social media profile, that adults have inappropriate contact with them, and there's not enough guardrails with these tech social media products to stop that. Even if there is, we have a fundamental problem of addiction with kids, and there has been an increase. And there has to be some correlation with the rise of social media and the increase in depression, suicides with kids, et cetera. So there are things that are happening here that, as much as there's a lot of good associated with technology, that there have been some negative things: polarization, disinformation, the weaponization of personal data, discrimination, based on that data, et cetera. So I think we're in a situation where, we may want to lean in a little bit more on putting some guardrails. And one thing I want to say, and I'll close this answer, is that I'm not proposing airline safety, that where, every time before a plane, takes off, you got to do 1,000 checks, et cetera. I think we need regulation kind of like what we have with car safety. I think it's good to have rules that say you can't have a baby sitting in someone's lap in the front seat. They should be in a baby safety seat in the back, that we should have airbags, that we should enforce some speed limits, et cetera. And lo and behold, look at the innovation that's happening in the automobile industry with electric cars, et cetera. It hasn't really, having these basic standards of emissions and safety standards and speed limits hasn't really slowed down the huge market that's the automobile industry and the innovation that we're seeing with companies like Tesla, et cetera. So we should kind of start having kind of automobile type safety to protect kids, for example, as it relates to technology, because as we've talked about, it's only going to get worse with AI, right? And so we got to start doing something, and maybe we should start looking to see, hey, maybe Europe has some good ideas. Maybe they're a little bit more, they've gone a little bit too far, but I'd rather have something versus nothing.
Yes, I think that's an important as well. And I was actually going to ask, because obviously, in mentioning social media platforms, And we've seen, unfortunately, the horrific things that can happen to our young people. You know, they get addicted to these platforms. Essentially, the platforms, it used to be that you interact with your friends and, you know, you might have been, have issues in person, but you could escape at home, such as like being bullied, but now it goes online. And, you know, there's no escape for these, you know, these young children. And it leads, you know, them to depression or in some cases, suicide. And so I 100% agree that, you know, we have to dive in and look at these issues a lot deeper. And so how do you think that social media platforms should balance, I guess, the freedom of speech, and then also I'm taking this away from now discussing the children, but showing like harmful content, such as, you know, right now we have multiple wars going on the planet. So a lot of the social media platforms in the last years became you know, under the microscope for like what kind of content, like, you know, can people be putting a video on about this? Can somebody, you know, jump on and say, I'm going to, you know, go to the streets and, you know, do all of these things. It reminds me, unfortunately, of some of these apocalyptic movies, but now those movies are no longer exciting and, you know, thrilling because we're now living it. So how do you think that social media platforms should allow you to have freedom of speech, or but also maintain harmful content, or moderate it, I guess I would say, or how should everybody kind of regulate? I think that's the biggest thing, is like who becomes a regulator.
Yeah, no, this is a tough issue because obviously, as I said before, we don't have privacy in the U.S. Constitution, but obviously the First Amendment, we have freedom of speech, right? So, and we don't want to lose the openness of the internet. And if you run a internet platform as a business, I like the fact that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act says you should not be held liable for content that's placed on your platform by the users. So that does provide the current interpretation of Section 230 does facilitate. But I do think we need to look at a couple things. First of all, we need to look at algorithmic amplification and whether that involves product liability. What I'm saying here is if you start pumping out certain posts, you being a tech provider or social media platform, if you start pumping out things algorithmically, then are you not becoming an editor, and should you not be held responsible? And right now there are lawsuits asking that question. There's one in the school district Seattle that they're suing the tech companies. The county of Santa Clara, where I live in California, is also suing the tech companies as well. So there's one thing about freedom of speech, but should there be freedom to amplify things that rile us up, et cetera? And if you purposely try to rile people up via algorithms to kind of stir the proverbial pot, then in effect, I think you are becoming an editor, and maybe you should be held responsible, or maybe we can look at this from a product liability, like a defective product that's not working properly, especially as it applies to children. The second thing is that, the large social media platforms have terms of services. They say, well, you can't post this type of content or that type of content, et cetera. But the problem is that they are selective in terms of the enforcement of it, right? And so if you say that you will not allow hate speech, et cetera, then why are you, a politician or a group is putting this out? You kind of need to be consistent if it's in your terms of service, right? And then there's also things that are clearly, illegal, and there should be some associated liability, like commercial scams, child sexual material, things of that nature as well. That, just because you have an open platform, but if people are using it to do illegal things that then they need to be held responsible for. And then finally, there should be an opportunity for end users on these social media platforms to flag content, and as opposed to like, I see something that's bad, but there's no way for me to report it, etc. And then furthermore, that the social media companies, especially the largest ones, should be more transparent by providing independent researchers and regulations with internal data on how their algorithms work and overall content moderation efforts. So there are things you can do, like, protecting kids, flagging illegal content, requiring companies to have a consistent enforcement of their terms of service that can improve the situation while not losing the flexibility and openness of the platform. Look, we've had people saying hateful things for years, but usually that's behind closed doors or with a like-minded friend or two in a conversation. But there's another thing that someone says something hateful, and to rile up and get more eyeballs for the tech companies to suddenly just amplify that those hateful comments and speeches across thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people right there. So I think there does need to be look at this whole algorithmic amplification and whether or not if people go too far to gather eyeballs, whether or not this is a product liability issue.
So each of us, we're personally responsible, but also become our own, I guess, if we decide to, as individuals, put out, a lot of people have become kind of their own advocate or activists on all the different things that are happening. Like one of the things I say is that everybody has become an expert in something now, even if they don't know anything about it. And so, the people start shooting out, their opinions based on whatever they, think, but then it's taken as the truth because, if you have enough followers, then people are like, oh, this person must know what they're talking about. And so, the other thing that I was thinking in my mind as you were talking about kind of our own, I guess, editors and managing kind of what we put out there is that, especially for the U.S., it's kind of, or I don't even have to say kind of, it's a question of like our freedom is at stake, or the question of what, I guess, freedom means in America, right? And I guess the scary part is, because obviously when they were writing the Constitution, I don't think they imagined that we'd be like living these like virtual type of lives. But it's kind of a question of like, where do we, I guess, do we need like essentially like a digital Constitution of America or something like that, in order to have us be able to, I guess, move without, I guess, I don't know if I would say danger or with parameters. I don't even know how to think about it, but it's kind of because it's not, it's virtual. But what I'm trying to get at is how do we keep our freedom, but I guess still stay true to who we supposedly are as the U.S. online. I don't know. I'm trying to phrase it. But yeah, because I think the whole thing is a question of losing freedom, because we might have the freedoms here, like in person, but then if we are now doing everything that we do online, right? You can do everything from grocery shopping to, your job to, people even have their virtual cocktail parties now. Like, we're living in two worlds. How do we manage that?
Yeah, I think it involves transparency, and that if we elect to, for example, give our personal data associated with us in exchange for a free online service, that's fine. But we should be told exactly, okay, here's what this transaction involves. Like, you're going to give me these 10 pieces of data, and I'm going to give you this service. And what happens is there's a lot of like free apps that do health related information, right? And they don't really tell you that they're selling your health data to other companies, right? And so I think if there just needs to be more transparency associated with kind of the modern digital world. And so then you give people the transparency, which also, and then you also allow people to have the right to be left alone. Like, so people should know what's being collected, and they should have the right to say no, right? And there are people that are like, hey, I don't care. Go ahead, collect this information. I will take the free services, et cetera. But there are people that say, well, actually, I really want to know what's being collected. And no, I don't want you to collect this information about us as well. So it's kind of just basically kind of boils down to having basic, rights of privacy. We do have the Fourth Amendment where, our home is our castle, that people just cannot walk in to our house and start rifling through our personal papers and documents, et cetera. That is a constitutional right. But the problem is, in the digital world, we've kind of lost that Fourth Amendment right? Because anyone can start, collecting and gathering information without your permission, right? Now, if someone knocks on your door and says, I want to rifle through your papers, then you have the right to say, okay, sure, come on in. I'll give you a cup of coffee while you go through my personal files, right? And that's fine. And or maybe you're willing to pay me $10 to let you go through my personal papers and take photos of them and copy them, et cetera. But in the online world, we don't have that knock on the door and people asking us kindly, can we come in? Or we don't have even, there isn't a court order, a subpoena, et cetera. So it kind of means that the Fourth Amendment, only exist in the online world, and we've kind of lost that in the digital world. And so I think there are easy solutions, which is have a privacy law, which asks for transparency, the right to know, and the ability to say no, and then also having businesses have some responsibility with their information. That if if you had your money in a bank and they purposely allow that money to be stolen, you can sue them, right? Because they were being negligent in protecting. You had a business relationship and they were supposed to protect your personal assets that you stored with them, and they were purposely negligent, and you could sue them. The problem is that we don't have that type of relationship. If a large tech company that has all our data, they get hacked or stolen, and through negligence, that they should be on the hook for that. And so I think there should be additional business obligations associated, much like we have obligations associated with our physical property. If someone backs into your car and dents it, you have rights. But what if someone does the equivalent in the digital world as well? So look, I think it all starts with transparency. And the ironic thing is that if you go to a grocery store and you buy a pack of gum for $1, I don't know if packs of gum are $1 anymore. I don't chew gum, but the back of the gum box, tells you exactly what's in it. It tells you how many calories, et cetera. So if you buy a mattress, oh my God, if you rip out the mattress tag, it's against the law, right? But there's nothing equivalent of, what we're doing. Or what they do is they purposely say, oh, well, take a look at our terms of service, our privacy policy, and it's a 50-page document, right? And it's buried somewhere in there as well. So even when we try to have, food nutrition labels equivalents for websites that collect information, they kind of purposely fool you and not tell you, nor give you the right to actually say, no, I want to opt out of this as well. So I think it just kind of boils down to having basic rights. And, as we talked about before, we got to have this in place, because otherwise these large tech companies will use that data not only to continue to sell you ads, but use it to create new products, new capabilities. And all of a sudden, your voice, your face becomes part of, their AI models, and they start building imagery based on you. And ironically, musicians and writers are up in arms that their music is being sucked up by AI. But should we not have similar rights to copyright holders as it relates to our voice? We shouldn't have our voice being used by a business to sell other people, products. So I think it starts with transparency. It starts with having a basic set of online rights and an online Bill of Rights. That's what we need.
Now, the next question I have on that is, how long do you think it would take for us to get something that would go into place like that? Like, to make it I guess it would have to go and be a federal law. So like what you were describing, I envision obviously they would probably make this into some kind of project that, everybody would have to go into an online system, and they would fill out essentially, I guess, a form or a survey that would say, okay, I'm okay with this kind of data of mine being shared, but not okay with that. I want to know this. And so then that would become kind of a pop-up, I guess, that would be come online to these users, and maybe, I guess, it would be attached to your either I guess IP or something like that you use regularly, and it pops up every time that you're going to go into something, and reminds you of what you said that was okay for you, and then if life changes, that you would have to go and update it. I guess that's what I guess I would see it, that would have to go into place. So I guess, how likely do you think that something like that would become a law across the country?
Well, we actually got pretty darn close, like a year and a half, 2 years ago, not this Congress, but the prior Congress, that there was the American Data Privacy and Protection Act, ADPPA. It actually passed a House subcommittee, but it was not able to be brought up to the full House. We've actually also last year had some very strong antitrust bills that it was clear that they had in the Senate that had great support, but the Speaker decided not to bring them up as well. So we've literally been in, using a football analogy, in the red zone to have both better antitrust, but also, better actually having a federal privacy law. There's been some hiccups. There were some legitimate issues as it relates to the privacy law. There's this concept of preemption, where the way that it was written, that it would not allow states to innovate when it comes to privacy laws. And then, unfortunately, with the new Congress, they're just kind of dysfunctional as well. So, one of the reasons why I wrote this book, Containing Big Tech, is just kind of beat the drum that we do need guardrails as it relates to technology. And I'm just trying to I'm just trying to get people to, understand as consumers, and hopefully maybe as policy people, the need and significance, for having, a privacy law, and then also at the very least an AI transparency law as well. So we've gotten close. It's within the realm of possibility. And if we're able to pass something like the ADPPA, maybe in the next Congress, it will be massive. And I talk a lot about some simple laws that we can pass in the book, and things that consumers can do. So this is not like, Mission Impossible here. These are things that can be done both by consumers, but also as policymakers, just to better protect ourselves.
I'm glad to hear a little bit. I feel a lot more hopeful, I guess, because honestly, when I was thinking about it, because I was like, how do we control things that we can't see in people who do not listen? So knowing that, it's just, we just need to push ourselves just a hair more and, put something like this in place, maybe feel a lot more hopeful. I want to change the conversation to something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, is one of the, and this is a different type of question going away from rules, regulations, and dangers, but looking at how technology has, obviously it's connected the world, but with these large companies and, the possibilities that they offer, how do you think, or do you think that they should have responsibilities in contributing to a global and social economic well-being? And how can these tech companies contribute to different regions in Asia, in South America, and Africa? So helping out, regions that may be more impoverished.
Yeah, I think the issue that we're at right now is that we're at a stage where we have these large big tech companies are the largest companies that we've ever seen in the world with immense reach, right? And unlike past monopolies like Standard Oil, these companies know everything about us. So not only do they have billions of users, but they have the digital voodoo dolls of each and every one of us. And as we move to the AI revolution, where it's about compute power and data to fuel AI models and AI systems, that they also are kind of a unique situation. And so the issues that we have as it relates to global social and economic well-being, part of it involves concentration of power. And I think that there are people out there that believe that when you have too much concentration of economic power, that leads to threats to democracy and social justice. It can lead to inequality. And so it's interesting that when monopolies or monopolistic situations have been broken up in the past, it's actually led to significant revolution. So I understand people are really concerned about don't go after Google, don't go after Amazon. They're the engines of innovation in our economy, et cetera. But if you look at what happened with AT&T, when AT&T was broken up, it led to the telecommunications revolution. If you look at that when the Department of Justice went after Microsoft because they had this position Microsoft did with its Internet Explorer that all manufacturers of PC must bundle Internet Explorer, and then when the DOJ said, no, that's illegal, you need to introduce competition, it led to, in part, Google coming up with Chrome, and it really opened up the internet as well. So I think that just across the board, that there's just been too much concentration in key markets by one or two companies, and that overall stifles innovation. It overall, concentrates power and wealth. It's part of the reason why there's been so much inequality that we've experienced out there. And we're now in a situation where, it's amazing that there's a small number of people that control the vast majority of wealth to a level and extent that we've seen before. And so part of the message in my book, Containing Big Tech, is we need to put guardrails around data collection, and we need to put some guardrails around AI. but the incredible concentration power, the monopolistic positions of some of these large tech companies are also not only exasperating the problems of privacy and the potential risk associated with AI, but it's also stifling innovation and aspects of our economy as well. And so I think that if you can address kind of concentration of power, especially as it relates to the tech companies, that while they've done a lot of good things and they've generated a lot of jobs and they've been a big engine, we probably also need to look at that. Maybe do they have too much power? Are they too big to fail? Do we have too many eggs in one basket? And is that healthy for our economy and society? Because it's clear that some of these tech companies are not addressing issues that need to be addressed, like kids' online safety, privacy, et cetera. And maybe breaking up in selected areas the concentration of power that will lead to a better result. And historically, we've seen that better result. So that's kind of the overall themes of the book, which is obviously very topical per your question.
Yes. And my last question for you, directly related to your book, is when you were writing your book, what was the most enlightening thing that you learned about, humanity and technology?
Yeah, there was a lot of things that I learned. I mean, one thing is that a lot of the tech companies said, "Oh, we don't do this type of practice," or and then I actually did research and I tested things out, and I found that no, they're still doing these things, or what they say that they do, they're actually not doing. And so I was able to kind of technically prove that as well. And then the second thing is, as it relates to overall, people and kind of humanity, that there is a significant interest and desire to, have more control over how data about themselves is being used. There is concern about, how AI could potentially be used in a negative manner as well. So it was also very encouraging that people, want to know more. They want to understand this, and they want to see change. And in the book, I just don't talk about the problems. I really try to talk a lot about the solutions that not only consumers can do themselves to reduce their data footprint. And it turns out probably one of the most popular chapters in my book is this appendix, the first appendix, which says, here's the steps that you can take to reduce your data footprint. And people have told me that they made Xerox copies and they've sent it to friends and relatives and all that stuff, just like the few steps they can take. But also I actually say, hey, here's some legislation. And even in the second appendix, I said, here's the stuff that you need to put in some of this legislation. So in the end, it's not really that difficult. We can actually, make progress. And I think people want to see that because they share some of the concerns that you raised.
Thank you, Tom, for your time and insight. If you'd like to learn more about Tom Kemp and his new book, Containing Big Tech, How to Protect Your Civil Rights, Economy, and Democracy, go to tomkemp.ai. If you have a passion for an unserved community, a social justice problem, or simply want to change minds, contact Project Good Work at projectgood.work to start your project of change today. It's that time again. The Changemaker Conference is happening. Register now at changemakerconference.com. Subscribe to our mailing list at projectgood.work/subscribe to get our episodes and blog articles sent to you each month, plus get a 10% discount on any project you start on projectgood.work. To our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Project Good, where we're focused on what matters.